so much for being here at SFU's SFU Innovates video series, where we take rockstar SFU-oriented or SFU-related entrepreneurs and find out more about them and their journey in front of a live studio audience, or our Business 238 class more specifically. Josh is an alumni of SFU, not just in the bachelor's level, but at the MBA level as well. So he has an engineering degree, electrical engineering from SFU, then went on to the MOT MBA, where he met his co-founder, Ben Sparrow, and they co-founded Saltworks. Josh and Ben went on to win New Ventures BC. They won not only the whole contest, but they also won the top sustainability prize, and that came with $160,000 to start. So doing pretty well. So why don't you first tell, what is Saltworks in your own words and in layman's terms?
Sure. First of all, thanks for the introduction, the amazing introduction. It's good to be here. Fortunate to have me here and to be able to talk to you guys and to be able to give back to SFU. A lot has changed since I've been in SFU, but a lot's the same. It's a good place to be back and to kind of feel the entrepreneurial vibe. So thanks for having me. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Saltworks. We do industrial water treatment. We take the really tough industrial wastewaters, mine tailings, oil and gas, the stuff that looks like black coffee. When you get oil out of the ground, water comes up with it. The stuff that comes out of landfills. And we take that and turn it into fresh water using our proprietary technology. We now have several product lines, and that's basically the business in a nutshell. There's lots of challenging, really tough to treat industrial wastewater around the world. There's a shortage of fresh water, and it's a good place to be in. It's a clean tech play, and we're also saving energy and creating jobs. So that's Saltworks.
That's fantastic. And I was reading about you guys, and one of the things that I think The Economist had said was ironic was a lot of the companies that were trying to treat water and be sustainability companies use so much power that they were actually becoming not sustainability companies.
Yeah, exactly. And I can give you a few examples, but there's treating clean water and then using energy and saving water and trying to do everything at the same time can be challenging. So we've kind of carved out a bit of a sweet spot there.
You have a bachelor's and an MBA, and
Yes.
we sometimes hear people say, and this is important for you guys, that you don't need an education to be an entrepreneur. So what led you, if you're someone who had already started a bunch of businesses, how come you went back and did an MBA?
That's an excellent question. I would agree that you don't need an education to be an entrepreneur, but it certainly helps. Yeah. It certainly helps. It's definitely an asset. Obviously, certain people will take you more seriously. There's that aspect of it. But the way that formal education forces you to think in a way that you probably might not otherwise. It kind of stretches your brain in different directions. You meet different people. You're exposed to different ideas.
Right.
And that was part of the reason I went back and did the MBA to kind of get exposure to more stuff, to meet different people from different walks of life, from different disciplines. Kind of find a way to move horizontally rather than getting stuck in a silo.
Was it worth it? What did you get out of it?
Well, that's where I met Ben, who's the co-founder of Saltworks. So the biggest thing I have to show for going back and doing the MBA was that I met the co-founder of the company that we're now running. And the MBA course material, it's interesting. There's a lot of learning finance, corporate finance, and learning kind of textbooky type stuff. But the innovation class with Dr. Main was very different. It didn't follow like a structured program the way I was expecting. It was, here's some ideas, and there's no right or wrong answer. Think about this. Just go off and think about it.
Right.
So that was interesting. It was kind of being exposed to a different way of thinking. The aha moment came when I realized that what I'm learning and what I'm getting out of this MBA program, I can do anything with it. I can take it to a completely different line of work or a different discipline or a different industry and apply myself there. Basically, the aha moment was, I can do anything. I don't have to keep doing what I've been doing or what I've been trained to do.
Now we know the past. Let's talk a little bit more about the present, or be close to present.
Okay.
So can you tell us a little bit about the founding story of your company, how the idea came up and how you got started?
Sure. So we finished our MBAs and went off in different directions, and I ended up working for a software enterprise software consulting outfit. And Ben Sparrow, the other co-founder, he went off and went to work for BC Hydro doing turbines, hydroelectric turbines. And so we've been out in industry for a couple of years, and then he contacted me saying, "I've invented this thing. We should talk about it. There's something here." And he was trying to take fresh water and salt water and mix them together to make electricity. And it was something he was fiddling around on the side. Say at the mouths of rivers, you can create power. And it didn't work. What ended up happening is he came up with something to get the salt out of salt water using less electricity. So it was a desalination technology. And we quickly realized there's something here. Let's enter New Ventures BC and see what happens. Right?
Yeah.
We didn't really know where we were going to go with this. So halfway through the New Ventures competition, we were advised that we should turn this into an actual company. So we went and printed business cards and did all the rest of it. And ended up doing quite well in New Ventures BC, and decided to actually turn it into a startup. So we kept working for about 6 months, and then quit our jobs and kind of went at it. And the first machine, this first prototype that we had, it looked like something out of Breaking Bad. It was all beakers and glass tubing, bolted to a piece of plywood. It was sitting in Ben's living room, and his neighbor downstairs was banging on the ceiling with a broom because it was leaking and there was a wet spot on her ceiling. He got evicted from his home, and so we ended up renting some live-work space and kind of just went at it. That was basically the start.
It's amazing how many people end up destroying their kitchen or their living room or their basement, the garage.
Yeah.
So what is your biggest aspiration for this venture?
To see it go huge, to see it go big.
And what would that mean for you?
Commercialized widely, and machines everywhere making lots of fresh water and cleaning up lots of dirty water. Every month that goes by, we become aware of a new type of wastewater that needs to be treated that people didn't previously need to. Mm-hmm. So the market kind of keeps getting bigger and bigger the longer we do this. But there's massive opportunity. Pretty much any industry that uses water, which is everything. You've heard it takes 1,000 liters of water to make a pair of jeans, or 50 liters of water to make a liter of beer. Those type of statistics.
Wow.
So any industry that uses water and any industry that makes a wastewater is an opportunity to clean up and help the environment.
So the more economic impact you have, the more environmental impact you have. So you've got a complete win-win scenario going.
We hope so, yes. Yeah.
We often hear about companies deciding to offshore. So what's making you stay?
Well, we love it here. BC's an awesome place to start a company. There's a lot of assistance for early stage companies, for startups. There's lots of grants. There's an amazing talent pool here. We've got some really highly skilled people. It's a beautiful province, you
Yes.
know. Vancouver's a nice town. It's also challenging to offshore. I mean, as you build a business and you realize there's opportunities to kind of send things overseas and to manufacture elsewhere, it's tough to do that. And it's sometimes easier to just build it at home, right? So there's certainly opportunities to do work elsewhere, but it makes sense to keep the mothership in Vancouver and in BC and where we can continue making sure that the business is run the way it needs to be run.
When have you pivoted, and what has that looked like?
The first pivot we did was when we started the company, we thought we were going to be making drinking water from seawater. We thought, hey, this is a new desalination technology. Let's save the planet and make drinking water. And as we developed the technology a bit further and we got out there and started meeting people and talking to industry, we realized that's totally not where the problem lies. There's lots of technologies out there that can already treat seawater. It's not a pain point. The real challenge is industrial wastewater. It's much tougher to treat. It's technically more challenging. There's fewer technologies that can do it. There's a higher willingness to pay for the customer. It's much bigger of an environmental problem, and that's where we should be focusing. So that was sort of the first pivot, going from thinking we were a seawater, drinking water company to taking on the tough stuff.
What has been your biggest failure or your biggest learning experience?
Oh wow, too many to count. I would say fail fast, fail often. Surround yourself with people who can tolerate that, because it's going to happen a lot. And I think of it as not so much failure, but it's like snakes and ladders, right? You go up a few and you come back down, you go up a few and you come back down.
Yeah.
And you keep going. Biggest failure, I'd say we had a point in the company history where we were growing very quickly. And we hired a whole bunch of people. We did a big hiring spurt and made some questionable hiring decisions. So that was one challenge that we had to kind of work through. There's been a few others on the technical side that we've had to work through.
I bet.
Yeah, snakes and ladders. Basically.
Snakes and ladders, but
yeah.
I would think a team would be incredibly important to something like this.
The team is everything. It's at the end of the day, a company is just a group of people who have agreed to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so you gotta have that team gel or whatever you call it, that camaraderie, and it's got to work, right? I think myself included, a lot of entrepreneurs think that you need a good idea in order to start a business. And that's certainly true, but even more important than that, you need the right people, you need the right team. If you have the right team together, you can execute on any idea. Another idea comes along and you can make it work. And quite frequently when you're running a business, at least in my experience, something will happen and you'll have to pivot, you'll have to change ideas. And if you have the right people, then you can do that. So really surrounding yourself with the right people and finding who your business partners are going to be, because you can't do it on your own. You definitely need at least one other or two other people to start the company.
What is something people think to be true about entrepreneurship, but you know to be false?
You need money to get started. Not true.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes entrepreneurs get caught up in how to raise money or how to get their startup capital. Of course, you do need that. You can't run a business without it. But if you're passionate about your idea and it's a good idea, the money will come to you. There's no shortage of people with money looking for ideas, and people with ideas who can make it happen. So if you have a good plan, and you're really passionate about what you're doing, people will be drawn to it.
You said you had previous ventures before you got into Saltworks. So my question was, like, as an entrepreneur, when did you know that it's time to move on to the next thing?
I'd say there's a handful of sort of key signals. One is that nobody's interested in what you're talking about. That would be one. Or no one wants to buy anything. Another one would be that the people that you're working with are not working out, in which case you can find someone else to do it with, or you can just move on to something else. Or that you're not passionate about it. Sometimes people get involved in a business or in a venture, and they realize that, this is cool, but this isn't for me. I'm thinking about doing this other thing, and that's where my focus needs to be, and that's where I think I'm going to be successful. So there's a few different reasons why you could move on. Could be anything, but just to be honest with yourself, and when it's time to move on, to do it.
When you were first starting the company, how old was your company relative to the other competition? Let's say General Electric was one of them, but what was your strategy to beat the other companies? I mean, they were already there. Second question is, what was your biggest lesson learned, or the costliest lesson learned?
How do we compete with the big dog?
The niche. Yeah.
The niche. To get a better technical solution. We looked at what was out there, and in the case of water treatment, it's not a very technically progressive industry. Customers don't like to adopt new technology very quickly, unlike electronics or software. So there's a lot of opportunities for innovation, because a lot of the solutions that have been out there, people have been doing them for a very long time. And so we said, where can we make the most impact? Where are customers unhappy with what they've been using this whole time? Let's go and talk to them and see what they want and see if there's something we can do to help them. There's been a few technical paths we've gone down, call it science projects, that have not worked out. And when you realize that something doesn't work, it could be 3 or 6 or 12 months later, And it's not only the resources that go into that, but it's the opportunity cost that you could have been doing something else for those last 6 months. So there's been a few of those. Really, doing not the most efficient or the best thing for the business, and trying to learn from that and realize when things aren't what you should be doing, to kind of cut it off and to go down a different path.
On the first question, so you don't have to give up too much details, but how did you beat General Electric in your recent contracts?
By being more responsive, and by basically catering to the small guy. General Electric is a huge company, and they're a fantastic company. They're very innovative, and they're certainly one of the leaders in technology. But because of their size, there's a lot of smaller customers that General Electric doesn't necessarily serve. So there's an opportunity there for a smaller niche vendor to go and deliver a level of service that smaller customer might not be able to get from a much bigger vendor. So we thought that was an opportunity to do so.
In order to compete, is PET something that's patents? Is that something good for new companies? Because they always say that it's really hard to fight a legal battle with someone that's really big. So was that a route you considered, or is that something you guys did? Because if you build a good technical solution and then General Electric or someone gets their hands on it somehow, would patents help?
They absolutely do help, yes. There's a bit of a strategy there. Once you patent something, it becomes part of the public domain. So you immediately tell everything to everybody, but at the same time, you sort of put a stake in the ground saying that this is my invention. And so I guess the strategy would be, how much do you disclose in your patent, and how much do you leave out and keep as your secret sauce, as your know-how. When you do have a patent, at least in the industrial space, competitors and customers don't necessarily want to infringe on your patent, because if it's found out that they're infringing, then that's going to damage their reputation. So you certainly want to be guarded in the beginning, and then as you get bigger and you start to grow your company, then you can disclose more intellectual property and patent more.
Well, how would you say over the last 10 years you've changed the most from an interpersonal standpoint?
My emails are a lot more terse these days, and the punctuation's not quite as good. The demands on one's time tend to go up. I think there's a plateau. As you start out, you get busier and busier, and then eventually, as the business matures, there might be an opportunity for the machine that is the business to run itself when you're not around. But certainly there's a period where things get very, very hectic and very busy, and there's a lot of demands on one's time, on one's personal time, and the impact of that is there's just less cycles to spend on different things, on different tasks. So you find yourself, at least I find myself, doing things in shorter sound bites, if that makes any sense, and just making sure that people around me are comfortable with that, and that it's not personal. That's just the way I am.
Well, I think we'll end on that very good question. Thank you so much, Josh.
Great. You're welcome.